Alright, what we're going to look at in this video are our systems of equations, and by that I mean we will look at, to start off with, we'll look at two equations to make our system. You learned in Algebra 1 that there were three different ways that you could solve a system of equations to find what the x and y values were, and this will review the three types that you learned. So we will analyze all the methods of solving the systems of equations, and then you yourself will be able to solve a system of equations, and you will be able to choose any of the methods that you want. And let's remember which methods there were. We had the graphing method, where we actually went to our coordinate plane. We have the substitution method, where we'll sub in an x and y value. And then we have the elimination process, which is where we actually eliminate one of the variables, either that x or that y. So we're going to look at our first one, which is our graphing. Okay, so we're going to take a look at that. In order to graph, you know that your equations must be in the form of y equals mx plus b. So we have to take our two equations here and we have to solve them for y. So if we take our first one, our 2x plus 3y equals 5, we must get y by itself. So the 2x would be moved over. So we would have 3y, the 2x would become negative. And then we must divide the 3 out. Remember, when you do your division, you must divide into all your terms. So we end up with y equals negative 2/3 x plus 5/3. Let's take our second one. Our 4x minus y equals 17. So we'll move the 4x over, so we would still have a negative y over here. Our 4x became negative when we moved into the other side. But we cannot leave that y negative, so we must divide him out of there. Y always has to be positive. So we end up with y equals 4x and then the positive divided by the negative becomes, the 17 becomes negative. So we're going to take our two equations here and we're going to transfer them over to a graph, over to a coordinate plane. So as you can see, I've put in our two equations. Our first one, the negative 2/3 x plus 5/3 in y1, and in y2 I've put in the 4x minus 17. Now let's look at the graph. If we look at the graph, we see that in fact the two lines intersect each other. In our window down here. Now what we want to do is we want to actually find that point of intersection. That point of intersection will be our solution. So we're looking for that point that is right there. So in order to do that, we're going to go to our calc menu. So we're going to hit second, trace. That pulls up our calc, and you see that number 5, so I'm going to scroll down to number 5, that is intersection. So we would hit enter, and there we have our first curve, we hit enter, our second curve, we hit enter, very similar to when we were finding minimum and maximum, and then we take our guess, and then we hit one more time, and there we have our intersection. We see that our intersection is occurring at where x equals 4, y equals 1. So right there. So our point of intersection on the calculator is x equals 4, y equals 1. And you have solved your system. So if we look at our graph that originally started with, we put in the point of intersection at 4 and negative 1. We have solved this. All right, now let's move on to our next one.